Welcome to Meditation and Inquiry. Today's topic is what is freedom? And we'll inquire in just a moment. Let's begin with some mindfulness meditation. So relax your mind and your body. Nothing to get from this meditation or from the inquiry, actually. We'll get to that. So just relax. Let go of any concerns you might have about anything. Take a few deep breaths to assist relaxing. And with normal breathing, be aware of the sounds, sound of my voice, obviously, the sound of the wind, sound of the nearby fan, the motor. Be aware of all the sounds. And be aware of physical sensations that will arise during the inquiry. And finally, be aware of thoughts. And there's nothing that needs to be done about a sound, a thought, or a sensation. Let them all come and let them all go. You're relaxed now and you're open and accepting of all the sounds, of all the physical sensations, and of all the thoughts. There's no resistance and no attachment. Now move the attention a little bit. Move the attention from the sounds, physical sensations, and thoughts. Move the attention from them to the one that's aware of them. There is an awareness, a knowing, when a thought, a sensation, a sound arises. So you're now aware of noticing, of observing a sound, a sensation, a thought appear and disappear. With self-awareness, everything slows down and there's no attachment to what's happening. And with the slowing down of thinking, there is clarity. A sound is heard clearly. A sensation in the body is felt clearly. And a thought is seen clearly. Clear seeing, clarity. Now, from the clarity of self-awareness, see if there is a space between sounds, a space between thoughts, a space between physical sensations. Look now, see if there is a space. If there is, without doing anything, no effort, relax in the space. Relax. Let your whole being become the space between thoughts, between sounds, between sensations. You're now space where all thoughts and sounds and sensations come from and return to. But space is not affected by any thought, any sound, any sensation. It just is. And as space, expand. Expand space to spaciousness, a vastness, spaciousness, emptiness. No beginning, no end, no boundaries, no limitations. This is freedom. You're free. Experience this freedom, openness, calmness. From this freedom and openness, let's inquire what prevents us from realizing this, from living from this acceptance and openness. So if I ask you, what is freedom for you? What does it mean? Does it mean this openness, this acceptance? Or do you have a picture of what freedom is? What would it look like? And freedom in this context is the same as awakening to your true nature. Freedom, awakening, synonymous, not separate. So freedom from what? Freedom implies that one is to be free from something, from bondage, from restraints. So what does freedom mean for you? What does awakening mean for you? If you're on a spiritual quest, what's the end game? What's the goal? To awaken, to be free? And how would you know when you've realized it? Would you have a picture of what freedom, awakening looks like from spiritual books, from teachers? What do you want? What does freedom look like? When would you arrive at this freedom? Would you recognize it to know you are free? Do you relate to this? Do you have a picture now or any time of what you want to achieve? Where is the bondage that you want to be free from? What do you want to awaken from? Because in this context, we're talking about time, to practice, to use different methods to awake. What if freedom and awakening is here, right now, where you are and what you're experiencing? Could you consider that possibility? Where are you now? What's the experience? Are you restrained? Are you restricted? Is there something you need to be free from right now? So what is it that makes us think that we have to become free? Well, let's consider some possibilities. It would seem that this attachment to I, to me, to the alleged ego, keeps me separate from other beings, and in that separation, or that supposed separation, from freedom, from union, from enlightenment, all just words. So what is this I that is seeking to, in some way, to become I-less and more unified, more in union? Well, this I is this package that is believed to be me, my name. Is that real? A name that can be changed and may have been changed already. It is subject to change because we can do it on a whim. So anything real about the name that we have? Anything real about where we were born? Where we live now and before? Transient. It's not permanent. Most of us have moved around in our lifetime, maybe changed the name. So is any of that real or permanent? Real in the sense that it's fixed and not a projection. What is? And what about gender? What about being born male or female? At one time, that seemed to be set, but now it isn't. And now there's gender realignment. So we can't say that the gender we were born with is any more permanent than our name, our birthplace. So what is real about ourselves? All the experiences that we've had make up this package of me, of I. But are any of those experiences permanent? There are memories of these experiences, and we believe these memories to be true, and this solidifies this sense of an I, of a me, with different experiences than somebody else. And we can look at these experiences and say, my experiences make me better than you. I have more experiences. I am superior. Or the reverse. I don't have as many experiences. I am not better than you. In fact, I'm inferior to you. But there's still the division of a subject, me, and all that's attendant to that, and an object, another, subject, object. But there is some dissatisfaction with that. There's conflict. And usually the conflict that brings is the impetus for a spiritual journey. The start of questioning, is this all there is? And that, just that little inkling of questioning, who am I? And one's life at that time, and the dissatisfaction with it can start the inquiry, can start the questioning. And that questioning can produce some major shifts in understanding, in self-understanding. So there's finding books, self-help books, to help you question who you are. And they're helpful. They're self-help books. That's what they're supposed to do. And then there are other tools. Maybe in your spiritual quest you've discovered psychedelic drugs. And psychedelic drugs can be a tool for opening, for experiencing something new, a revelation. And other tools that can help open oneself up to questioning are meditation, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, and all the other alternative tools. And what they do, be it a psychedelic drug or a meditation or a yoga or a Qigong or a Tai Chi experience, is that the mind slows down, thinking slows down. In the meditation today, maybe the thinking process slowed to some degree. And in the slowing of the mind stream, there is an opening for something else to be revealed. In the meditation, it's referred to as spaciousness, openness. It's always there. It's just overlooked by the mind stream. But these tools mentioned provide an opportunity for thinking to slow down, and something else can be revealed. And in that revelation, this sense of self, separate, loses its power. That's a taste of freedom, when the I is not there, in a moment or in many moments. And it doesn't necessarily require any tools for that to happen. It can happen in a moment, and it probably has happened sometime in your life, where all of a sudden this sense of an I is not there. It can be frightening if you have no context, that you might be losing your mind. Well, the end of the spiritual quest is really to lose your mind, to lose this mind stream that is obeyed incessantly. But unless that is understood to some extent, then it can be confusing and frightening, but also exhilarating. So there's a taste of freedom, and the tendency of mind is to want to hold on to that space, that experience, because it is so pleasurable. When we lose a sense of self, then the possibilities and potential of everything else appearing is there, beyond the capacity of the mind to understand. Because understanding is the purveyance of I, of me, of wanting to understand everything that's taking place in my life. We have been brought up to understand. And freedom and awakening are not understandable. because it's not from thinking. Thinking can have concepts of enlightenment, of presence, of awakening, of freedom, but that's conceptual and not real. It's just an idea. And we're not talking about an idea, we're talking about an experience, a shift, a revelation that mind cannot comprehend. Where are you now? What's the experience of what's been suggested? Do you relate to it? Where are you? So we're questing for a realization, for freedom, for awakening. Where are we in this spiritual journey? Where are you? Where are you? In this moment, do you see a need to find more tools to realize your true nature? What's there now? When you let go of becoming whatever you think you need to become, whatever freedom, awakening looks like, when you let go of all of that, then what is there? What remains? Right now, if you let go whatever you're experiencing, even trying to understand what's been said, what's there? Because with the realization that this is not real, this is not real, this is not real, this is not real, then what remains is freedom. And that's available in each moment. It's not in time. And all these tools that have been mentioned are helpful in coming to a place of realizing they're not needed anymore and letting go of them. There's no time frame when that happens. There's no formula for any of this. Otherwise, it wouldn't be something to become. It wouldn't be a mystery, the open secret. All that can be suggested is eventually all tools and all ideas of what these tools will bring you need to be jettisoned, need to be dropped. And then there is the spaciousness to realize that you always have been that. In this moment and in every moment. Not knowing freedom, not looking for freedom, is freedom. The awareness of something that's arising in the moment and not needing to do anything about it, not needing to change it, is freedom. the feeling of joy without identifying with the cause of that feeling and wanting to hold on to it, but just the joy in that moment is freedom. No whys or wherefores, but the experience. Because in that joyful moment there is no I, there is no me that wants to understand the cause of it and wants to hold on to it, but just the isness of the joyful moment. The isness of the sad moment. Not why am I sad, but the experience of sadness. What does it feel like? It's that which is experiencing all this, the joyful and the sad, is the freedom. So what prevents us from being free? There is no thing that prevents us. It's just an idea. And the opportunity is there in all the time, to question this identification, this I, this me. Who am I? And not want an intellectual answer to that question, but just to ask the question sincerely and not seek an answer. Because the answer will come unexpectedly, and it comes from freedom. So what does freedom, awakening, mean to you? Are you willing to give up the pursuit to be free, to awaken? To let go? And see what's there now. Please, anybody with a question or comment?
How is freedom embodied in the masculine and the feminine?
Please, can you speak a little louder?
How is freedom embodied as the masculine and the feminine?
How is freedom
embodied.
in the masculine and feminine? Okay. Well, as was mentioned earlier about gender, gender is an expression of source of freedom. And the qualities that we ascribe to a particular gender are qualities, are the expression of that. But again, gender is not, as it was mentioned, is not permanent. And these qualities come and go. So it's not being attached to even gender. Everything that makes up this description in this package of me. That doesn't mean that you don't live your life as a male, female, or what have you. But that's not what you're basing your life on. It's a whole different way of living that's not based on gender identification or name identification. Please, there was a question there.
When you ask about the freedom,
Yes.
what is for us and how we feel, I imagine about freedom detaching,
Freedom what?
detaching from
Detaching.
everything, yes.
Detaching.
So being able to really work on your detachment and detachment of everything, not only material things but also the needs of things or the ideas that we have from others or from ourselves. But I'm in the process of that.
Say again the last
I'm
part.
in the process of that.
The process of becoming detached.
Yeah.
And that's your question? Or just a statement?
It's a statement.
Okay.
That I visualize freedom with that. If you're able to detach of absolutely everything.
Okay, there's one trap in that. We make detachment as something to attain. And right away that can create a conflict. It's just another spiritual concept. I'm too attached, I need to be detached, okay? When there is just a questioning of what is this idea of what I think I need to perpetuate me to be pleasurable, be it pleasurable or whatever is to control my life, is leverage. So it's not to detach from that, it's to see it clearly. And in the seeing of it, the question, is it real? Then there is a letting go. But it's not from I need to detach to become enlightened. It's to let go of even the concept of detachment as a way to become something. You hear the difference?
Mm-hmm.
It's to let go of this concept of detachment because it speaks of its opposite, attachment. But just to see and question this me that's wanting all these things. Are they necessary? Because when there is that deep, sincere questioning, then there is a seeing of what is real, or the clarity that's been mentioned is there. And there's just a dropping of it. It's not I have to become detached. It's letting go of detachment and the whole concept of attachment and detachment. These spiritual concepts are so seductive. And they're constantly being thrown at us. You need to do this and do this and do this to become this. And the suggestion is here you don't. You don't need to do any of that because you're already there. Let go of the ideas and concepts that you're not, that you have to do these things. Question them. Question them all. Question what's been suggested here already. Don't take anything I've said and say it's God's truth. Question it. See how you relate to it. Please, anybody else?
It's more like a
Yes.
statement.
Say again?
It's more like a statement.
Uh-huh.
When when you said let's be free and but then become one.
Mm.
In the beginning, I felt like it's not so easy to be free when you become one because you consider about every other beings also, and you feel like you need to. I felt like I always need to be like aware, helping,
Yes.
and this is not freedom.
Yeah.
Uh, but then to me, it come like this: like if we are the one, then yes, we are all free because uh, the thing that I see that I want to be free from was the looks of outsiders because I think we mostly look ourselves from other eyes. But when we are one and I am one, and it doesn't matter what anyone feels, like we are already one, and like I felt the connection, and hard to tell, but
So when do you still feel sometimes that so-called outsiders, when you feel them looking at you, or I'm adding the word judgment, are you comfortable and content with that, or does that produce some,
yeah, it
it
produces.
still produces some
Yes, but
frustration?
yes, it was a lot actually.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, and that's natural. That's still, we want to be accepted. We want to be loved. And there's another inquiry that I do about what is love, where we really get into that. But it's still this I that needs to be supported, that needs to be told in verbal or nonverbal ways. I'm okay. I'm okay. I need to feel good about myself. And that's fine. To be aware of that is a major step in letting go of that. Okay? To seeing how other people, we perceive that, how they look at us, because it's always a projection. It may not be happening, but we experience it as somebody judging us. When in fact, when we inquire, it's judging ourselves. So when we start to see that whole dynamic of that movement, again, just seeing it, not I have to do this, but just in the calmness and the openness of seeing it, then the change can take place. Not beating oneself up, but just seeing that movement. And then from that becomes an acceptance of oneself and whatever's taking place. And from that is the oneness, that realizing that everybody else is experiencing, if there is another self, which is questionable, is going through the similar experiences. But it always begins here. It always begins here. And the opportunity in each moment to see what is real. Yeah. Did you raise your hand? Were you asking a question? Okay. It, in one way of putting it, there is the way most people live in the world is, as you mentioned, there's the material aspect of needing to feel good about oneself and what we think will bring pleasure, and to acquire, okay, the acquisition of material, the acquisition of it's also called, can be called spiritual materialism, to acquire, to become. So there's that, and in that first way of relating is what can create conflict between the so-called self and another, because wanting to better myself, and if somebody is preventing that, then there is the blame game and all of that without getting into details. So that seems to be one level of relating in the world, and probably the most common way. And then, as was alluded to earlier, then there can be a questioning of that, because it seems to be unsatisfactory. It's creating conflict. And after so many conflicts, is this all there is? And then becomes, as mentioned, the impetus for looking and inquiring. And that can lead to the second level of understanding self and the tools that have already been mentioned that are available to understand self, okay? Yoga, meditation, and psychedelics. So, and that's all helpful too. They're tools. So there can be a shift from the first level of understanding to the second, which is a more mature way of experiencing life, and taking responsibility in that second way than in the first way. In the first way, the other person is responsible for how I'm living my life, and you want the other person to change, because if they change, then you feel better about yourself. So that's the first way. And then the second way, the shift is to take responsibility. It's all happening here, and with the tools that have been mentioned. And that's a place which is a very nice place to live one's life. And for most people on a spiritual quest, that's as far as they get. The shift from the first to the second. But there's another place. There's another place where you realize that you're not responsible for anything that's taken place. You let go of responsibility and you give it to Source. If you will, you give it to God. You just say, I realize I am the totality of it, not this little speck, which is an expression of that. And realize all of this is an expression of it. And that's the major shift. That's the awakening. And from that, you can understand and appreciate the so-called other places. And from that comes compassion and understanding. And realizing it's all part of the fabric, the mosaic of life, not separate. It's all an expression. And then you realize that this is the expression, not related to just gender or any other identification, but realize that's part of the play as well, but not attached to it, but saying, yeah, I can use it and I can play it. And it's just a role and it's not permanent. The play of life.
But where do you get or take the motivation to do anything then? Because everything's already here, it's perfect as it is. I'm just why would I even do anything if
But you do. Even to not do
yeah,
something is
because I
to
want to be
do.
because I'm not there yet, because I want to become something, because of other influences. I feel like I to, because I'm not at that level, but if I'm at the level where I'm just part
Okay.
of the big picture, what makes me then even
The-
not just sit and
right, right, right.
enjoy the bliss?
Maybe you will,
Huh.
but you don't know. That's the thing. There is a fear that comes about when there is the talk of being free, being awake, and letting go of this personal identity, because that's all we know. So if we let go of it, the fear is I'm just going to be a vegetable and sit here and meditate, maybe. Or it might spur on some great project, some adventure that has never been thought of before with this personal description. It's the not knowing what's going to happen. But what can happen is just what you mentioned. I won't be motivated. But do you know that's going to take place? You see? It's the not knowing and the willingness to play in the not knowing. And the fear that that can bring up. That I will just waste away. Or whatever the projection is. Because the projection is from the mind. It's a cultivated and conditioned way to not let go, to want to hold on to this, rather than let go and see, not know what's next. To be on the tightrope without the safety net. That's that's the big shift.
I felt it was the knowing.
Hmm?
I felt it was the knowing. But you were saying it is the not knowing.
Right. Knowing what?
Knowing truth.
Okay. How would you know the truth? What would
Knowing
be
it
the
from
truth?
my own experience or perspective of truth.
Okay. So if you let go of that idea, that perception of truth, then what would take place?
Spaciousness.
Not knowing.
Not knowing.
And can we live from not knowing? I'm not saying you give up knowing. To understand and to be logical is fine. But it's also to be illogical from the structure of logic and lineal thinking is to let go of that and see what happens in unstructuredness. There's chaos and there's structure. So it's playing in the unknown, the unstructured, the not known. It's another way of putting it. Because we have been conditioned to understand what's going on in our lives, especially from the West. We need, we want to understand. That's the whole point of education. Well, this is a different approach. This is saying, don't abandon understanding, just realize understanding takes you only so far.
The thing about you said playing roles.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
The thing you said about playing roles.
Yes.
Like this concept, it irritates me a lot. Like if we are in the moment and we just be okay, I know it's like spiral, like it's changing all the time. Um, but do we really play a role? It's then it's not real, and it's weird.
Well, if you look at your own life and at times what you're feeling and how you've dealt with it, there's a role that's probably uh, you're playing. Roles are just roles. They're just ways of behavior, of a way of being. But it's the attachment to the role and say that's who I'm going to be the rest of my life. But see that this behavior can change in any moment. This personality, all of it. And there's nothing wrong or right in it. It's just a way of saying that the expression of that in these forms begat roles, begat ways of expressing it. And the role, if to use the term role, um, we have an actress here, and she can go into more detail about what roles are all about. And the fun you can have with it, or whatever role, if it's one of being depressed, okay. At one point in your life, you may play the tragic heroine or tragic hero, and milk that and play that one, and then get out of that and play somebody different. Those are all roles. Those are all stories. And we like stories because we tell stories. We pay a lot of money to go to movies and watch the stories that other people create for us. We're all storytellers. We're playing. That's one way of looking at it. Please, anybody else?
When you mentioned us being responsible of our reactions, okay, so let's say that we are aware of a certain reaction that we had from something that someone did. So we are aware of it's our responsibility of how to react. But then it's like, okay, you see it, and then you let it go. Or what happened then? Like in order to grow from that.
You tell me what you think happens.
Um, what I have been trying to get to that step is yes, to see what is in me that is creating that reaction. But then I'm still stuck there a little bit. Like, okay, I'm aware that this is bothering me a little bit, so I work on that. I don't suppress the feeling, I work on that reaction. But then,
What kind of work do you do on that reaction? What's the work?
depending on the situation, but if I'm feeling like frustrated or upset, I will go and do things that help me feeling better.
Okay, okay. So stop right there. Here's a suggestion. When you're reacting, the reactive mind is in play, and rather than move from it, move from the unpleasantness, if that's what's occurring, rather than do that, to experience it completely. What's the story about it? Not what the other person is doing, but what is the reaction here? The reactive mind is in play. What's going on here and what's going on physically? What's the manifestation in the moment physically? And the story about it, okay? The story may be I need to get away from this because I'm just so frustrated. Okay, what's suggested is be frustrated. Bring all the awareness and attention to what is it to be frustrated, because that's the experience in the moment, okay? And the opportunity is to totally confront it, to meet it, explore it, investigate it. What is it? And that's the self-inquiry. And in that inquiry, in that looking, in that wanting to understand, not necessarily look for the reasons in an intellectual way, but experientially, to really experience what it means to be frustrated. And in seeing that, there can be a disillusion of that. Not wanting to run away from it, but meeting it with awareness. That's mindfulness. And not knowing what's going to happen from that inquiry in the moment. Playing in the unknown. Okay?
I feel truth in that as well. To really meet any emotion and feel it as fully as is needed. I would do the same to make myself feel better. If something, a negative stigma or experience happens, I'd mask it by just doing positive, but I didn't actually really reflect or feel that fully. Just made myself feel better temporarily. And then when you go through it fully, now I reward myself by doing that, and I feel so much better because I have let go, cut that cord down.
Mm.
Yes,
Yes.
about the roles. Uh, it's because we are what I've okay, this is concept, but probably like we are older souls and I am in this body, so of course I play roles, but like sometimes when I don't know, maybe my description about it is not true. Like you choose when you go to a place, you choose your role to be like a fun person or crazy. It's and you go and you do that. It makes me feel really annoyed and like after that feels like nothing is real. So it goes to a real conclusion, but I don't know. What do you mean
Are
exactly?
you dissatisfied with the concept of that you may be playing a role and you don't want to be because it doesn't feel like it's real or genuine? Is that what you're saying? You're uncomfortable with this concept of, of
Playing a role.
playing a role? Forget about somebody else. What does it bring up for you? Because obviously there seems to be some conflict with just the concept of playing a role. And not necessarily you need to explore it now with me, but would you say you're somewhat frustrated by this whole idea of roles? Because it seems to be a thread that you are involved with.
Yeah.
So the suggestion is, look, what's that all about? Just feel the dissatisfaction that seems to be happening now, and what's going on for you with the story, and maybe some the physical sensations that are going on along with the story, and just explore that. See what that's all about. The role is just it's a perspective. It's just a perspective. It's not any more real than any other perspective. And if you see that all these perspectives are not true in the sense of being real, they're just perspectives. One person's perspective, another person's perspective. But when you see all perspectives are not real or not true, then no problem. But we believe one perspective as opposed to another, it becomes a belief. And then we can live our life based on this perspective, this belief. And we find others to support this belief. And then people who don't have that perspective, don't have that belief, are enemies. And there's conflict. But you can see and realize it's all empty. They're just perspectives. They're just a way of saying something in the moment. And you can change perspectives like the swish of a horse's tail. Please, anybody else?
So we need to see behind their ego, their roles.
Behind the ego there is,
Behind their ego, behind the roles they are playing. We have to see beyond that.
yeah, and it's not a matter so much of seeing beyond it. It's to question: is the ego real?
Yeah.
We have been taught and told time and time again that there is such a thing as ego. But is that true? What is ego? And in the next week, I think it's next Tuesday, yeah, a week from today, we'll be inquiring about who am I, and this whole question of ego will be the topic next week. So please, any other questions or comments?
Do you feel that ego is real?
As far as I'm concerned, it's conceptual like everything else that we believe to be true. And it's just an idea that has been taken and has gotten gigantic in that we believe it to be true. We got to kill the ego. We got to do something about the ego. But is it real?
I feel that I'm aware of my ego, and I know when I am coming from a mature spiritual self and from ego, even though I do not wish to separate them. But my ego likes to impress people, to want to feel attention from others.
So are you saying you're using ego as the same as I, me? Is it any different from I or me, what you're
It
describing?
is my inner child that is not matured yet,
Okay.
in my experience.
Okay, so there are these spiritual concepts, the inner child, and this has produced some particular way of seeing the world, of experiencing the world, would you say? Okay. So if this idea of the spiritual, the that, the inner child, if there's a willingness to let that go, and the possibility of experiencing the world differently, because I'm experiencing the world based on my experience of doing work and the inner child and so forth and so on. So that's a way, a construct that has been learned to experience the world. And what's suggested is if we let go of these constructs, as mentioned, these tools, which are helpful in having some self-understanding, but to let go of all of that and play in the unknown, that's the question. And is there a willingness to do that? And not know how the world will be experienced. Yes. There's a smile, yeah.
Because I often equate the ego
Yeah.
as a negative.
Yeah,
Why
of
would I want
course.
to be my ego?
Of course. And then there has to be something done about the ego. But the question is there such a thing as ego? And see what comes up. Okay, any other questions or comments? Then let's conclude with a few minutes of sitting together. So just relax. Relax your mind and your body, and don't hold on to anything that's been said so far. Don't make it into a belief or something that has to be done, okay? That's already passed. So holding on to that and making it into something to do, not necessary. See if those thoughts are there. And if possible, easily let it go. And what's there? Feel a breeze. A sensation in the body. Some thoughts. And all just coming and going. And while everything appears and disappears, comes and goes, if that is the experience, then is there something that is aware of what comes and goes in this moment? Isn't there awareness? Awareness is unchanging. It is. And you are that awareness, not what comes and goes. And that realization is freedom. So rest and relax in what you really are and the expression of that, not separate. Namaste. Thank you.